Catus Maximus here, this time with yet another Ratchet video. But this one's a little bit interesting because I'm comparing two different Ratchets and they're kind of give and take. It's really kind of strange. But KAL is a company that's, I believe, still around, but I don't know if they're making tools. They kind of did more contract work, so you just hardly ever really see many KAL tools. I'd done a video about this KAL USA 1/4" ratchet, which looks pretty cheesy, but it's American made and has a very heavy duty twin ball mechanism. And then I ran into this KAL, and it is indeed the same KAL. So I believe this ratchet is one where after they had moved production overseas, and this is made in Korea. You really don't see many hand tools made in Korea. And what I think is kind of interesting is essentially the finish quality went up when they went overseas. It's a more competitive product, so they could have, or it was cheaper to make for an equivalent quality level. So what they did is they moved it overseas, but they got a nicer looking ratchet than the one that was made in America, even though the one that's made in America is very heavy duty. One thing that we can see is this old one, this USA one that I got, I was like brand new, almost no wear. With this Korean one here, you can see that anvil, it's almost polished. It's really, really surprising. If we rotate it around to this side, almost all the carbon is worn off. This is a well-used ratchet, quite a bit of dirt buildup, and it can use some cleaning right at the point where it's going to start slipping, but it still does work. Unfortunately, it does have an amazing amount of anvil wobble in there. As far as the knurling is concerned, we'll do a comparison of both of these. This American-made one just, seems cheesy because the knurling is just not very good on it. It has this kind of weird, really straight, hard-edged head on it. And we can see on this one here, it's much more rounded. The knurling is actually pretty nice. This is a pretty nicely done round knurling. You can tell quality knurling because each of the little diamonds are all nice and even. There isn't like one set of thick lines this way and a set of thinner lines this way. Really, I'm actually kind of surprised. It's the finish on this ratchet's pretty nice. I like the reverse lever, although I kind of like the one, an American-made one as well. We can also see that, surprisingly enough, if we get it pretty close, this Korean one's actually a little bit shorter. So anyway, the video is just interesting comparing essentially the same tool, 1/4" ratchets from the same company, but one domestic and then one after they moved to foreign. So unfortunately and you'll see that there's a little lip here, so I'm not going to really be able to do a snap ring trick kind of like this. Ratchets that have internal snap rings are easier to shim the play out of than these ones that use external rings. As soon as you get it up, you just get one corner going and you just swing it out of there. Pop this open, and unfortunately we can see that this is indeed just a single pawl design. And now if I pop open this old American-made one, that's what was kind of surprising about this, is it was ugly, but it was overbuilt. Kind of what you would expect out of an American-made tool. See if I can get this snap ring off without killing myself. There we go. We can see this American-made one here. We've got two pawls. You can see that they're also offset, so that they're really engaging just a huge area of this ratchet body here. And it's kind of surprising. We can take a look at both these ratchet bodies. This one is just like really coarse and ugly, but it has super thick walls. And you can see how much bigger it is than actually the overall diameter is about the same. It's just the way that this is curved makes it just a little bit more elegant than the hard edges of that. And they did do a little bit more work, such as the cutout for the recess there. Anyway, just wanted to do a little comparison of both of these ratchets. Should really take a look here. We can see that the pawl size on the Korean one is not quite as large. If we get both of these right next to each other there, they're almost the same size, but it looks like the American ones are just a little bit stronger. Now, the issue with round head ratchets, although some of them are pretty strong of this design, I'll call this the SK style design because they invented this specific design with this little rocking pawl in there. Has this little spring-loaded finger that just pushes up on this side, or when you turn the lever, it just flips over to the other side. There's a pin that rocks on, and that pin, as you can see, is pretty small, smaller than the anvil. So many times when round heads fail, besides slipping, if they break, it's not the housing that splits apart. It ends up being this pin on the pawl shears, and then the pawl slides over and jams the ratchet. So that's why I like twin pawl designs like this, because now we have two different pins. Additional force, additional support. Although sometimes that's not always the case, just because some manufacturers choose to instead have a twin pawl design and then have one pawl slightly offset from the other one. That's actually not the case in this KAL, so that you can have some really coarse teeth, say 40 teeth, but since one pawl is offset from the other one, it's kind of like the Gear Wrench 120 XP, where you can get 80 teeth because one pawl only engages at a specific time, and when you turn it, it's lifting up that paw and riding on, the very edge of the teeth, and the second paw is actually sitting into the groove, effectively doubling the amount of teeth you have versus how many are actually cut into the ratchet head. Anyway, let me finish getting these back together and cleaned up. I did want to give a real good close-up here. I'm starting to clean out these teeth, and those are actually some pretty deeply cut teeth. I'm suspecting this is probably going to be in the range of 40 to 50 teeth, maybe 44 teeth. 44 teeth seems to be pretty common. 40 or 44 seems to be real common with round heads. Anyway, got these back together. This one's obviously has done quite a bit of work, has essentially stood, quote-unquote, the test of time, and actually doesn't slip. Sounds a little bit more solid in the forward direction, and I suspect that's because it's probably been used to break and run out more bolts than it may have been used to run in, or it's just the way it decided to wear. So still, overall, it's a reliable ratchet, but a basic design. It kind of looks nicer than the old American-made one, but certainly isn't as physically robust. And we can certainly tell that by the way this one sounds. Those are some chunky clanks for a little 1/4-inch ratchet. And it does have a distinct advantage where this USA one, where the reverse knob is actually inset into the body of the anvil. And what that does is that prevents any chance from this reverse knob from rubbing against the body of the ratchet and having any self-reverse issues. By using this type of design, it is impossible for this to self-reverse just by using a tool, because there's no way for the moving portion, the body, to interact with that. Although fiddling with this old Korean one, definitely no issues with it wanting to reverse either, but it can be a possibility just if you're really binding or wrenching on it. And what ends up happening is you ratchet, and then when you go forward, what happens is the knob binds, and so you actually kind of turn it just a little bit to get the pawl to kind of get a little jammed up, and then when you shake it, it ends up reversing itself. And this one actually is pretty good in that respect, and I'm actually surprised that it still isn't slipping or having any kind of big issues, despite its work. And the loose anvil play, that's probably the biggest deal, is just how loosey-goosey this is. And you feel that when you're using the tool, because if you're all bound up and it's like at an angle. Let me demonstrate. It kind of gets a bit crunchy. That's why I always try to shim my round head ratchets as much as possible. And it's a particular effect of these swing pawl SK style designs. New Britain style designs can have very wobbly anvils and still not get all, chunky and bound up, but they have a floating pawl in them. Anyway, another excessively long ratchet video, but this is just kind of the impossible to find information. Is like KAL used to make their tools in the United States, and then they actually moved them over to Korea. They look nicer coming out of Korea, but they actually just aren't, and they're a little bit shorter, but they certainly aren't built quite as heavy duty as what the old American made ones were. This ratchet's ugly, but it's strong. This one's pretty, but it's a bit weaker. I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.